For exercise 1, students are to discuss the topic of staycation as a preparation for the coming exercise. If you prefer, you could do this activity as a class mind map activity. In the center of the board, write staycation. Then draw a line to a bubble labeled activities you can do in the house, ensuring there is space underneath to make notes. Elicit ideas such as have a movie, or draw a second line from staycation to another bubble labeled activities you can do near your home. Elicit ideas such as visiting local parks and museums. Encourage your students to give you more ideas and possibly more categories. Leave the mind map on the board to help your students with ideas during the lesson. Now, let's move to the guided practice stage. For exercise 2, students are to listen to a monologue about staycation in order to identify the places Wael visited on his family's staycation. Before students listen, ask them to look at the photos and say what they can see in each one. From left to right, hot air balloon over ancient sites, Luxor City, and river from the sky, Luxor Museum. Either play the whole text or play the first paragraph first, then play the second part, which contains the answers. Ask students to listen and complete the activity individually. After listening, have your students compare answers with a partner. Elicit answers around the class. Ask students what other information they can remember from listening to Wael. Now, for exercise 3, students are to listen again to the monologue for more details. To answer some questions, read through the questions and elicit the key word in each question. Number 1, how, to what, why, and so on. Students complete the task individually or with a partner for support. Students can either listen to answer the questions or discuss what they think are the answers with a partner, then listen to check. Elicit the answers from the class, along with the student's reason for the answer. Now, for exercise 4, students are to listen again for more information to complete the sentences with the correct information. Read through the first sentence together and decide what information is missing. A number of years. Ask pairs of students to work out what information is missing for the remaining sentences. Play the recording for students to listen and complete the answers. Listen again and check answers around the class. Now for exercise 5, students are to learn and use verbs with the gerund and the infinitive. Put students into pairs to read through the language box and complete the sentences with the correct form. Circulate and monitor for any difficulties. Ask students to read the language box around the class to check answers. Answer any questions students have about the language box before moving on to exercises. For more practice, ask your students to close their books. Write gerund and to infinitive on the board in 2 columns and elicit the verbs for each one from the class. Write them in the correct column. If it helps, you could do this as a game, splitting the class into 2 teams. Say one of the verbs from the language box and nominate a student from one team to say which column it goes in. Continue until all the words are on the board. Now for exercise 6, students are to practice using verbs plus the gerund and the infinitive, and they choose the correct form of the verbs to complete the conversation. Draw students' attention to the verbs in bold in the sentences. Elicit which verb from students use for number 1, to plus infinitive. For example, to stay. Students complete the remaining sentences individually. Then compare answers. Play the recording and pausing after each answer to check. Ask students to read out the whole sentence. Now, for exercise 7, students are to work in pairs to talk about staycation using a mixture of verbs with gerund or to plus infinitive. Read the instruction and ask a student to underline the key words, for example, saw, did, felt. Remind the students of the staycation mind map on the board. If you made one in exercise 1, for better to fluency while speaking, allow your students 1 minute to write notes, not full sentences, on what they want to say. Give your students 2 or 3 minutes for their conversations in pairs, then give feedback as a class. Now, let's move to the assess your students' progress step. Draw students' attention back to the lesson objectives at the beginning of the lesson. Go through each objective individually and refer a student to the corresponding exercises. Once students have found the exercise that corresponds to the lesson objective, ask them to consider if they feel they have met the objective. For example, for the second objective, do they now feel that they can use verbs followed by gerund or to plus infinitive? Put the students into pairs and ask them to review the language box on page 71. Then write 2 sentences each, one using the gerund and the other using to plus infinitive. They should then swap their sentences and peer correct each other's work. At the end of the activity, pairs should decide if they can use the gerund and to plus infinitive well, or need more practice in class or at home. Now, let's move to the class performance activities. The classroom performance activities work as your tools to check your students' progress in achieving the target learning objectives.
تابعوا حلقات برنامج دليل المعلم على تطبيق مدرستنا بلس. مدرستنا، المستقبل يبدأ الآن.